We're going to look at 7-3B, budget, income statement, and supporting budgets. The budget director of Gold Medal Athletic Company, with the assistance of the controller, treasurer, production manager, and sales manager, has gathered the following data for use in developing the budgeted income statement for March. And then we have all of our data from A through F, and if you have a regular textbook, it goes on to the next page, G down to J. So our instructions are to prepare all of these different budgets. Okay, now remember from the PowerPoint, each budget builds on itself. Okay, so we're going to use the data from our textbook to construct our budgets. So the first one we're going to start with is our sales budget. So at the top of our sales budget, we're going to write the company name, which is Gold Medal Athletic Company. And then our date is going to be for the month ended, I believe we're doing March. Yep. For the month ended March 31st, 2019. Okay. Now for our sales budget, we're going to look at, if we look at letter A, it says our estimated sales for March were 1,200 units at $40 per unit of batting helmets and 6,500 units at $165 for football helmets. Okay, so we're going to come back over here to our sales budget, and the first thing we're going to list is batting helmets. And our book tells us that we had 1,200 units and that they were $40 per unit. And when we multiply those two numbers together, we get a total of 48,000. And we're going to do the same thing for the football helmets. The textbook gave us the 6,500 units at $160 per unit, which is what we're selling them for. Multiply that out, we get 1,040,000. Okay. So then our last line is going to say total revenue from sales. I'm going to put a single line under here, add these two numbers together, and we get $1,088,000. Okay. So that's our sales budget. So all of the data for this budget came from letter A in our textbook. Okay. The next one is our production budget. So again, Gold Medal Athletic Company. For the month ended March 31st, okay. So now our production budget, we're going to come over here and it's going to tell us, it talks about in letter B, our direct materials and our estimated inventories, okay, and in letter C as well. So letter B tells us our inventories as of March 1st. Letter C tells us our inventories as of March 31st, what we would like to have. So we're going to use the data in B and C to do this budget. Okay. First thing we're going to list on our production budget is our expected units to be sold. How much do we think we're going to sell? Because we obviously need to create those. Okay. And as we saw up here in our sales budget, we're expected to sell 1,200 batting helmets and 6,500 football helmets. So under batting helmets, I'm going to put 1,200. And under football helmets, I'm going to put 6,500. Okay, so that's how much we're guessing we're going to sell. In addition to that, in our textbook, it tells us that we would like to end the year, desired inventories March 31st, okay? We would like to end the year with 50 batting helmets and 220 football helmets. So this one is going to say desired ending inventory as of March 31st. Okay, and our book, so our textbook tells us that our desired inventories on March 31st are 50 batting helmets and 220 football helmets. So 50 batting helmets, 220 football helmets. I'm going to add these two numbers together. I get 1,250 and 6,720. Okay, now this number tells us the total units available. Okay, that's the amount of things that we need to produce in this month. We need to produce that many. However, we had some already done. Estimated inventories at March 1st, we had 40 batting helmets and 240 football helmets to start the month. Okay, so estimated beginning inventory as of March 1st is going to be 40, and I'm going to put this in parentheses because we're going to subtract it, and 240. We're going to subtract those numbers and we get 1,210 and 6,480. Okay, so this tells us how many units we absolutely need to produce, estimated need to produce during this month. Okay, so this is your total units to be produced. So we took the amount that we had estimated in our sales budgets, added what we wanted to have left at the end of the month, and then subtracted what we started the month with. So this is what we need to produce in the month of March. Okay. Okay, so our next budget is our direct materials purchases budget. Okay, this one's a little bit more lengthy. This one takes a little bit more math. So we're going to start at the top with our company name, Gold Medal Athletic Company. For the month ended. Okay, so for this one, we're going to look at, if we look in B and C, it talks about the direct materials. Okay, estimated inventory March 1st of our direct materials, desired inventory March 31st of our direct materials. Okay, letter D talks about the direct materials used in production. And then letter E talks about the anticipated cost of purchases and beginning and ending inventory of our direct materials. Okay, so we're going to kind of use all four of those, B through E, in order to do this one. So first thing we're going to do is list our units that are required for production. Whoops. Units required for production. So we need to list how much plastic and how much foam lining we need for each item in order to produce them. Okay, so we're going to start with our batting helmets. Now we know from our production budget that we wanted to produce 1,210 batting helmets. Okay. If we look in our textbook, it tells us in letter D that in manufacturing a batting helmet for plastic, we need 1.2 pounds. Okay, we need 1.2 pounds per helmet. We want to create 1,210 helmets, so we're going to multiply this times 1.2. And when we do that, we get 1452. So this means that we need 1,452 pounds of plastic in order to create our batting helmets. We're going to do the same calculation, but for the foam lining. So if we look at letter D, in manufacturing batting helmets, foam lining takes 0.5 pounds per unit. Okay. So we're going to take the 1,210 times the 0.5, and we get 605. So we need 605 pounds of foam lining. So that's what's going to go over here. Okay. And then we're going to do the same calculations for the football helmets. We know from our production report that we want to produce 6,480 football helmets. We know from letter D that for a football helmet it takes 3.5 pounds of plastic. When we multiply those out, we're going to get 22,680 pounds of plastic. Then we're going to take the 6,480 and find out how much foam lining we need. And our textbook tells us that it takes 1.5 pounds of foam lining for a football helmet. So multiply this times 1.5 and we get 9,720. Okay. Okay, so this is what we need for production. We also have a desired inventory. As of March 31st. And if we look at our textbook, it tells us desired, and letter C, desired inventory at March 31st, 50 pounds of plastic and 65 pounds of foam lining. So we're going to list those on our sheet. I just forgot 65. Okay. So this is how much inventory we're going to need. We need the amount we need for the batting helmets, for the football helmets, and how much we want to keep in our inventory so we have some. So we're going to put a single line here. We're going to add these three numbers together. So for the first column, I get 24,182. And for the second column, I get 10,390. Okay. And this tells me how many pounds I'm going to need. So we got total pounds available, and you could use the LBS instead of writing out the word pounds. Okay, now I need to subtract my estimated inventory for March 1st. Okay. So I'm going to look at my textbook, and letter B tells me my estimated inventories at March 1st were 90 pounds of plastic and 80 pounds of foam lining. So again, I said we're going to subtract, so we're going to put those in parentheses. And when we subtract those, we get 24,092 and 10,310. Okay. And that's how much we need to purchase. So this is going to be total pounds to be purchased. Okay. So this tells us units. This tells us pounds. It doesn't tell us an amount of money we're going to be spending on this. And of course, our budgets are all about the amount of money. So if we look at letter E, this is where letter E comes into play for this one. It tells us that our plastic is $6 per pound and our foam lining is $4 per pound. Okay? So our label is going to say unit price per pound. And we had 6 and 4. So here we're going to multiply these. Oops. And we get 144,552 and 41,240. And then I'm going to add these two numbers together to give me a total. How much do I have to spend on all of this? And I get 185,792. Okay. And this tells me my total direct materials to be purchased. Okay, so this is how much I'm spending on the direct materials. Is this 185,792. So again, the data for this problem came from B, C, D, and E. Okay. Now the next one is going to be direct labor costs. So we're going to look at how much labor and how much we're spending on the labor that we're putting into this. And if we look at letter F in our textbook, direct labor requirements, that tells us how many hours it takes to make each part and how much money we're paying each department as well. Okay, so that's the data we're going to use for this one. So again, your 3-line heading. So we have gold medal athletic company. For the month ended. Okay. So we're going to start by calculating how many hours it's going to take to make the stuff we want to make. So hours required for production. And it already has us set up with molding department, assembly department. So we're going to start with our batting helmets. And again, we're going to have to do a little bit of math. We know that we are creating 1,210 batting helmets. We know that from our production budget. So we have 1,210 times, so what we're looking for a batting helmet in the molding department. So if we look in our textbook, it tells us the batting helmet molding department takes 0.2 hours. Okay, so we're going to take 1,210 times 0.2, and we're going to get 242 hours. And we're going to do the same thing for the assembly department. 1,210 times, and our textbook tells us that it takes 0.5 hours in the assembly department, times 0.5, and we get 605. Okay, repeat that for the football helmet. So we take the 6480 from our production report. And multiply that by whatever our textbook says. Football helmet molding department is 0.5 hours. And we get 3,240 hours. Take that 6480 times, our textbook says in the assembly department it takes 1.8 hours. And we get 11,664. I'm going to put a line under these and add them together, and this is going to give us our total production hours. And we get 3,482 in the molding department and 12,269 in the assembly department. Okay, so this is how many hours it takes in each department to make these helmets. So now we're going to list our hourly rate, which we can find in our textbook. It tells us that in the molding department for the batting helmets it's $20, in the molding department for the football helmets it's $20. So we're going to stick the $20 in there and multiply that, and it tells us for the assembly department it's $14. Okay, so now we're going to multiply these, and we're going to get $69,640, $171,766. Okay, and I'm going to add those two together to find out my total cost, which is $241,406. So labor, it's going to cost me $241,406. So this is going to say total direct labor. And materials, it's going to cost me $185,792. Okay, so we've got materials and we have labor. The next one we're going to calculate is our factory overhead. Okay. If we turn the page, if you have a textbook and you're turning the page, it's going to tell us on letter G what our factory overhead costs were. Okay, so we're just taking all these factory overhead costs from our textbook and listing them on our statements. So I'm going to put a little letter G here. Come to think of it, I don't think I put that on the other one. For the direct labor, we use letter F. Okay. So we're going to start with our company name. Gold Medal Athletic Company. For the month ended March 31st. Okay. So again, we're just taking our factory overhead cost and just listing them. Okay, so the first one they give us is indirect factory wages. $86,000. Power and light was $4,000. Depreciation of plant and equipment was $12,000. Insurance and property taxes was $2,300. Okay, so then we're going to put a single line here and just add these, and they come out to be $104,300, and this is our total factory overhead costs. Okay. So the next budget we're going to do is our cost of goods sold budget. Again, like every other one, we're going to start with the company name, Gold Medal Athletic Company. For the month ended March 31st. Now, our cost of goods sold budget is going to take our previous 3 budgets, our factory overhead, our direct labor, and our direct materials budgets, and put them all into one report. Okay? Pretty much to find our what our cost of goods sold is going to be. So we're going to start with our finished goods inventory as of March 1st. So if we look in our textbook, oh, sorry, that's blurry, there we go. If we look at our textbook as of March 1st, it tells us that in our finished products, we had 40 units of batting helmets at $25 per unit and 240 units of football helmets at $77 per unit. Okay, so we have to do some math here. So I'm going to come down to the bottom of my paper here, and I'm going to start with the 40 batting helmets times the $25 per helmet. Gives me $1,000. And then the 240 football helmets times the $77 per helmet gives me $18,480. And then I'm going to add these two numbers together, and I'm going to get $19,480. Okay? And then this is my finished goods inventory for March 1st. This was my batting helmets, this was my football helmets, and this was my inventory. So I'm going to come back up here and fill this number in all the way over here on the right, $19,480. Okay. So this is what we had in our inventory. We started March 1st. Now we're going to go to our work in process. As of March 1st. All of this should be. So work in process March 1st. We're going to look in our textbook, and if we look at step 6 where it says prepare a cost of goods sold budget, it tells us that the work in process at the beginning of March is estimated to be $15,300. Okay? So our work in process in March 1st is $15,300. The next thing we're going to list is our direct materials. So we're going to pull our direct materials from our direct materials budget that we previously created. Okay. The first thing we're going to do is figure out what our direct materials inventory was on March 1st. Now, that is not specifically on our direct materials budget, so we're going to need to calculate that one. If we look at our textbook, let's get my page back, estimated inventories March 1st in my direct materials was 90 pounds of plastic and 80 pounds of foam lining. And then letter E told us that my plastic, where did it go? My plastic cost $6, my foam lining was $4. Okay, so we're going to go down to the bottom of my page. I had 90 pounds times $6 gave me $540. And then my 80 pounds times $4 gave me $320. I'm going to add those two numbers together and I get $860. Okay, so again, I just took these from my estimated inventories at March 1st. And I got $860. Okay. Now, the next thing, so this is what I had in my inventory. Now I need to know what I purchased, or what I'm going to purchase. Direct materials purchases. And if we look at our direct materials purchases budget, we can see that there's $185,792 worth of materials that we need to purchase to produce what we need to produce this year. So I'm going to pull that number, $185,792, right off of that budget. going to add these two numbers together, and I get 186,652. And this is my cost of direct materials available. Cost of direct materials available for use. Okay, so I have $186,652 worth of materials that I can use. So our cost of direct materials available for use is $186,652. Okay, so now from that we need to deduct the direct materials that we want to have as of March 31st. Okay, so direct materials, inventory, March 31st. Okay. So if we look in our textbooks, it tells us our desired inventory on March 31st is 50 pounds of plastic and 65 pounds of foam lining. And again, in letter E, it tells us that it's $6 for plastic and $4 for foam lining. So I'm going to come back down here, and it said it wants 50 pounds of plastic times the $6. It's going to give me 300. And then the 65 pounds of foam lining times the $4 gives me the 260, and then I'm going to add them together and I get 560. Okay, so the number is going to go right here, and I'm going to subtract that because that's what we want to have in our inventory when the month is over. Okay, when I subtract that, I get 186,092. And that is my cost of direct materials in production. Okay, that 186,092. So now I have my materials. Now I'm going to add in my direct labor. My direct labor is going to come from, let me flip my paper over here, my direct labor cost budget, and it was $241,406. Okay. And then my factory overhead, which comes from my factory overhead cost budget, which was $104,300. Okay, so I have my materials, my labor, and my overhead. I'm going to add those three numbers together, and I get $531,798. And that tells me my total manufacturing costs. Okay, so I need to take into account this work in progress amount at the top along with this total manufacturing costs. So I'm going to add those two numbers together, and I get $547.98. Okay, and that tells me my total work in process during the month. Okay, and then I'm going to remove my work in process for March 31st. And if I look in my book, it tells me in the problem for number 6, the work in process at the end of March is desired to be $14,800. So we want $14,800 to be left over, so we're going to subtract that. And we get $532,298, which gives us our cost of goods manufactured. Okay, again, cost of goods manufactured. So of all of the things that I created in the month of March, it cost me $532,298. Okay, that's not my cost of goods sold, and that's the amount I'm looking for is my cost of goods sold. So I'm going to take this $19,480 at the top, this $532,298, and I'm going to add these two numbers together. And I get $551,778. Okay. And that gives me my cost of finished goods available for sale. So that's how many things I have completed that I can actually sell. Okay. So knowing that I have $551,000 worth of merchandise that I can sell, I need to find out how much I'm not going to sell. Okay, so I'm going to look for my finished goods inventory on March 31st. Okay, so if I look at my book, letter C tells me are my desired inventories at March 31st finished products. So I had 50 batting helmets at $25 and 220 football helmets at $78. So again, I need to do some math. So I'm going to come down here to the bottom of my paper. Okay, I had 50 at 25, which gave me $12.50, and I had 220 football helmets at 78, which gave me $17,160. Add those two numbers together, and I'm going to get $18,140. So I'm going to subtract that $18,140 from my inventory, because that's what I want to have left over at the end of the month. And I get $533,368. Okay, and that is my cost of goods sold. So this one was a lot more in depth than the others. But just a quick review, we started with our finished goods inventory March 1st. What did we have in our closet that we had available for sale? We had a work in process as of March 1st for $15,300. And then we had to calculate our direct materials. Okay, so our direct materials turned out to be $186,092. Direct labor and factory overhead for a total of $531,798. Add in our work in process. Subtract out what we want left in our work in process for the end of the month. Gives us $532,298. Add that to our already finished goods. And then subtract what we want left over at the end of the month. Okay, gives us our cost of goods sold. Now we're going to use this number in a little bit, but go ahead and set that one aside. The next one we're going to do is selling and administrative expenses budget. Okay, so again, we start with the company name, Gold Medal Athletic Company. Whoops. And then for the month ended, March 31. Now this is our selling and administrative expenses budget. So we're going to just list them. So we're going to start with the word selling expenses. and a colon. And if we check in our textbook, letter H tells us everything we need to know. Okay. Now, if you have a textbook, if you have a pencil, you should have a pencil, so that's what you're supposed to do your work in. You can check mark these as you go so you don't lose them. Okay. Again, anything that has to do with selling. So the first one is sales, salaries, expense, 184,300. I'll go ahead and check that one. Oh, 184,300. Okay. The next thing is advertising expense, and that's selling, so I'm going to check that one. For 87,200. Office salaries expense is going to fall under administrative. Office equipment is administrative. So telephone expense selling for 58. That one we need. For 5,800. Okay, administrative, here's another selling, travel expense for selling for 9,000. And then office supplies expense and miscellaneous administrative are going to go under the next section. Okay, so that's all of my selling expenses. So it's going to say total selling expenses. Put a line under it, add them all together, and I get 286,300. Okay. My next heading is going to be administrative expenses. And again, back to letter H, I'm just going to take all of the ones that don't have check marks by them, and those are my administrative. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and list those. Okay, so again, I just listed all of the ones that were in the book that I hadn't check marked for selling. And then I'm just going to add them up. And I get a total of 39,500. And that is my total administrative expenses. Okay, so then I'm going to take my selling and my administrative, I'm going to add those and I get 325,800. Okay. So then my heading is going to be total selling and administrative expenses. Okay. Now take a deep breath. We are on the last one. This one is going to take all of the previous budgets that we've done and it's going to kind of put them all into a pile here. Okay, we're going to put them all into one report. So again, we start with the company name, Gold Medal Athletic Company, for the month ended March 31st. Okay. So we're going to start with, just like you'd start any income statement, we're going to start with our revenue. Okay, so we have revenue from sales. And for that, we need our sales budget. And our sales budget tells us that our revenue from sales was $1,088,000. Again, this came from my sales budget. Okay. And then we're going to put in our cost of goods sold. Which came from our cost of goods sold budget. So $533,368. And then I'm going to subtract those two numbers and I get 554,632. And that is my gross profit. Okay. So I've got my income, now I need my expenses. So I have selling, and administrative expenses with a colon. And I'm going to list my selling expenses. We're going to separate these out just so that at a glance they can see how much we spent on each one. Okay, but if we go to our selling, let me find it. Oh, it's up the top of my paper. No wonder I can't find it. If we go right here, total selling expenses were $286,300. And administrative, again, we're just looking at the top, was $39,500. Okay, we're going to add those two numbers together, and we get $325,800. Now, these three numbers, let me just put a note here, are from the selling and administrative expense budget. Okay, just so you know where I got them from. So, of course, this is my total. Okay, so I'm going to take these two numbers and subtract them. And I get 228,832. And that's my income from operations. Now I'm going to list any other, whoops, revenues and expenses. And if I look in my textbook, it tells me in letter I that I had interest revenue of $940 and an interest expense of $872. So an interest revenue of $940 and an interest expense of $872. So I'm going to subtract those and I get a $68 difference. $68 revenue. So then I'm going to add the next two and I get $228,900. And that gives me my income before taxes. Okay. So then, of course, the next thing is going to be the income tax. And my textbook tells me in letter J that my tax rate is 30%. So I'm going to take this $228,900 times 30%. Whoops. And I get $68,670. Subtract those, and I have $160,230, which is my net income. That is a lot of steps to get to your net income. However, in a manufacturing business, these are the steps that they have to take. Okay. Now, one thing that I kind of stopped doing there for a little bit in the video, and I apologize, this data came from I and J, and this data came from H. Just realized I hadn't done that on these. Okay, you can go ahead and, if you've already finished your PowerPoint, tackle your assignments. If you haven't, then go back and finish your PowerPoint. Have a great week.